Hey, welcome to the show. The topics on today's show will have you feeling excited and confused. If you are fully vaccinated, that means you can take off your mask. You can go mask free. But the confusing part is this: some places are still requiring the mask update. Public transportation and some places like Target. That's the confusing part. Man, I think it's confusing just basically because it's like, okay, if I don't get it. If we're vaccinated, doesn't that mean that we cannot go maskless or not go within 6 feet? Well, technically yes, but there's a recommended it's what the CDC says, not the employees. I mean, if an owner wants to enforce the rules saying that I don't care what the CDC says, we're still going to enforce the mask rule until I'm not afraid to ask my boss about when we're going to take off the masks or start allowing people back in. I mean, since a year now, we have been allowing customers in to sit down. Also, because of that, they're sitting there saying, well, since we're not going to allow customers in, we're going to raise the rate. We're going to raise the pay rate for all new employees. $11, $10, $12. That is, if I brought Charles Corrigan in here and saw what he did, I think he would just simply look at that as unacceptable. I'm not criticizing the fast food. I'm not criticizing what all McDonald's are doing. I'm not criticizing that at all. I'm just saying. But if you're not fully vaccinated, the tips are this. You need to make sure that masks are on at all times, like this, not like this, not like this. It has to be at the top of at the bridge of the nose. Also, social distancing, 6 feet is a requirement. If you have COVID, if you test positive for COVID, you need to get the vaccine immediately. If you haven't got the vaccine, it's a good suggestion you do. If you don't know where to get a COVID vaccine, you should look it up in your areas and try to make sure that you have a mask on while doing this. Also, disinfect your area every time, whether you're at school or anywhere else. Disinfect your area immediately. Disinfect your wipes, paper towels. That goes for everyone in school. Also, wash your hands every 30 seconds in hot water. It really helps to kill the bacteria and germs. If you're sick, simply stay at home. Just let them know. If you got symptoms of COVID, you let them know. And if you got symptoms of COVID, just let them know. Let your boss know. They'll understand. Child's under to a medical condition? Well, it's basically, just let them know beforehand. Let them know your child's medical condition, and they'll understand. Which brings me to this from Inside Edition. Let's see if I can find it, because I remember seeing this, and I was going to report about it a couple of days ago, but then I'll tell you about it later. This is what I wanted to show you. So, let me play it for you. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to play it for you guys because the only thing you can cast right now is YouTube. That's the only thing I can cast. Take a look.
Says her entire family was kicked off a plane because her son finds it difficult to wear a face mask. 3-year-old Orion Scott suffers from sensory processing disorder.
It can make wearing a mask challenging, but he has worked so hard with us, with his occupational therapist, to be able to now keep his mask on consistently.
Caroline Scott says she notified Southwest Airlines in advance of her son's condition when she, her husband, and their 2 boys were booked on a flight from Denver to Fort Lauderdale.
The supervisor said, "Can you 100% guarantee that you will keep the mask on your son?" And I said, "Of course."
The family was allowed to board the plane. The mom says Orion was sitting with his mask on before takeoff. Then they heard their names being paged, and they were asked to identify themselves to the cabin crew.
And then another supervisor came on the plane in front of, this is a very full flight too, so probably 200 people, and said, "I'm sorry, you have to get off the plane. The captain does not feel comfortable with your family flying today." We were deplaned because we disclosed my son's disability, so it was humiliating.
The incident comes amid reports of children with autism being asked to get off planes. It happened to this family from Arkansas.
Are you supposed to not travel on a plane?
Well, not traveling for us, that's not an option.
Meanwhile, billionaire Elon Musk shows the world what you can accomplish even if you're on the spectrum. He made this surprise revelation when he hosted Saturday Night Live.
I'm actually making history tonight as the first person with Asperger's to host SNL. Or at least the first to admit it.
What do I think about this? First of all, let's ask the question. Can you disclose medical conditions on airports? Well, basically, what I have to say is probably exactly. That's what I have to agree with. Exactly. It's basically what this way to just limit close contact, allow passaging. There's nothing in here that says do not disclose medical information. It's recommended that passengers refrain and do not expose to x-rays. I mean, medical card. I mean, they notified TSA beforehand and they said, we don't feel comfortable. If your son so-and-so, well, that's exactly what happened. And I feel bad for the parents. I hope next time they won't notify. Alright, I've been learning this broadcast. Can you get kicked out of a Six Flags park for wearing short shorts? We'll explain that a bit later. Then an update on a story we did a couple days ago when John Longoria and another board member decided to talk about the homework thing. We'll give you that. But next, how states and businesses are dealing with the CDC mask advice. That story next. With the CDC giving out the mask advice for everyone, the question is, how are states and businesses dealing with the CDC's mask advice? Well, like I told you earlier, there's some places in Corpus Christi that will allow you to throw the mask away, and some places you cannot throw the mask away. Target and other places, some other places, they have a mask recommendation, and they have the mask recommendation. So the question is, how are states and businesses dealing with that mask advice? Take a look.
For more than a year of masks, ditching them is taking some getting used to. Just ask the First Lady.
Isn't it great? Don't you feel good without it?
We're doing it. We are doing it.
It was cause for celebration at the Today Show.
Are we a little too excited?
Look, I think it's doable. We are two vaccinated people.
Two vaccinated people.
But co-host Craig Melvin couldn't join the party. He's not fully vaxxed yet.
If you're fully vaccinated, it is a big day.
The hosts at GMA remained socially distanced, as did the anchors at CBS this morning. Gail King expressed how a lot of us are feeling today.
Now that it's here, I'm still like wearing one.
When I was leaving this morning, the doorman said, I said, "Why are you wearing a mask?" He goes, "Why are you wearing a mask?"
It's going to be a hard habit to break.
It is.
Our camera crews were out and about today across the USA. In Hartford, Connecticut, some did, some didn't.
It's fantastic. It makes me so happy.
At this boutique in New Jersey, it was good riddance to masks.
We're back in business.
In Times Square, we found a mix. Some folks still wearing masks, others happy to toss them.
It's like freedom. Freedom.
But not so fast. Here in New York, the governor says he's keeping the mask mandate in place for now. Same thing across the river in New Jersey. It seems like every state is enforcing their own rules, and many businesses say they're taking it slowly. Kroger supermarkets, Macy's, and Walgreens are just some of the businesses today who say they will still require masks. And you still have to keep your mask on while traveling on planes, trains, and buses. We asked Dr. Oz for his advice for anyone nervous about ditching their mask.
The CDC guidelines are you don't have to wear a mask, but it doesn't say you can't wear a mask. So, yeah, put a mask in your pocket. You might end up in a crowded location, especially if you're in an urban area, if you're going to travel. So that way you have that safety valve there. And recognize that if you've got some other reason that you don't feel safe, put the mask back on. But you should not feel compelled to wear a mask because you're worried about the people around you if you've been vaccinated.
Meanwhile, many of the nation's colleges are holding in-person commencements again.
It's happening!
The University of Southern California is holding their graduation ceremonies outdoors at the LA Coliseum. They're conferring degrees on this year's graduates and last year's graduates, a total of 34,000 students. The ceremonies will be spread out over the course of 7 days. The graduates are limited to 2 guests. There will be social distancing, and they must keep their masks on.
Oh my God, I could kiss you. Literally, because we're both vaccinated.
The late-night hosts reflected the mood of the nation. Overall, pure joy.
Woo!
I would have to agree. So, like Dr. Oz said, I'm going to say right now, if you're not fully vaccinated, get yourself vaccinated so you can be mask free. I'm not vaccinated because I don't know if I can. But if you don't know where it is, look it up. Go do your research. Write down some places. You can schedule an appointment. Schedule a COVID vaccine appointment, and then you can you can be mask free. But if you're not, you still gotta wear your mask and stay socially distanced. Try to understand. We're taking this slow. We're doing the best that we can to make sure that we're going back to normal. Still ahead. 5 students in Orange Grove schools were arrested for hazing. What does that mean? Is it a form of bullying? I've talked about bullying a lot of my times, but this is the worst. And then later, we're going to be focusing on that statement I told you about a couple days ago when basically John Longoria, the member of the CCSD school board, decided to make a statement about homework. He talked to Rudy on Channel 3, did not talk to Channel 6, but he has that statement. We'll read to you next. There's a big outbreak in mosquitoes, and mosquitoes are getting worse. But that's why there's always these tips at hand to make sure that you don't get yourself bitten. 3 consecutive days you need to spray yourself with some mosquitoes. And that is and that's probably the best thing. Get yourself some DEET. Get yourself some plants. And always remember the 5 Ds. You need to use insect repellents with DEET. You need to wear lawn sleeves and pants outdoors. So if you're going outdoors, you need to make sure you wear lawn sleeves and pants. It may get hot, but it is the best thing you can do to make sure there's no mosquitoes on you. And they can also show up at dawn, daytime, and dusk. So you need to stay indoors. And if you find any standing water, you need to drain and see your doctor if necessary. Let them know about what's happening. Because let's face it, these skeeters are bad. Really bad. I'd hate to be bitten by one, but let me tell you, it's really bad. Alright, a couple days ago on this show, we told you about CCSC school member John Longoria, where he complained about students giving out too much homework, like 15 problems. After that board meeting that happened on Monday, Tuesday, Nancy Vetta of the AFT of Corpus Christi, American Federation of Teachers, called for the resignation of 2 of the trustees. Now remember, it was 1, but we didn't know till then, until we watched the footage, until I walked you through the footage of another board member. And keep in mind, this other member agreed to what Longoria said. So he was complaining about too much homework, like 15 problems. And when I watched this, I was exactly stunned. Like saying, we have good test scores, this and that and the other. Well, yes, I agree with all the test scores. But what I don't agree with is teachers giving students like 15 problems of homework, and yet coming home with writer's callus. What is that? What is writer's callus? Well, basically it's the area of accumulated dead skin cells from a result of repeated friction against your finger. It's also sometimes called a writer's bump or a nerd bump. It's usually formed repeated use of pens, pencils, or other writing utensils like crayons and all that stuff. But there is another. It's called writer's. There's also called writer's cramp. Like when in SpongeBob was like, my head is cramping, Mrs. Puff, make it stop. Well, it's probably the same thing. It's also, another name for this is called FHD, focal hand dystonia. It's a diplomatic movement disorder of adult onset, characterized by abnormal posturing and movement of the hand and or forearm during tasks requiring skilled hand use, such as writing. The causes of overuse of writing, it's mainly in adults. But what about kids? Do kids get the writer's cramp? Well, basically, I think it's in adults, so I don't think it can be found in kids. There's no cure for writer's cramp, but there are treatments. Like all that kind of stuff, and that's what I was complaining about. If a teacher gives out like 50 problems of homework, and yet they keep writing down these problems, like continue, their hand is going to, they're going to keep on doing it, their hand's going to cramp. And who the end's going to get blamed? Not the teacher is going to say, well, he didn't take notes. He didn't take notes. I'd have to agree with Longoria. Because coming home with 15 problems, that's bullcrap. I call it bullcrap on this. For 2 reasons. Number 1, 15 problems is unacceptable. What I do, you do 5 problems, and then you do the rest at home. Simple. And teachers get complaining like, we didn't take notes. Well, that's the choice of a teacher. If the teacher decides for the child to take notes, that's the choice they have to make. But too much homework and but since COVID, But there's the homework gap. How is the pandemic affected by the homework gap? Well, April of last year, it's estimated that more than 55 million students in the United States were out of school when educators had to find new ways of teaching students. Many schools adopted online platforms and began remote learning, but only those that were available in the digital divide was problem enforced. It only has a full-blown issue. The families, it's due considering that the workforce is deemed essential workers. Keep in mind, this was from the Arkansas State University. But doesn't homework always work when kids are learning all day at home? Well, according to the Washington Post, according to the Washington Post, I think the superintendent think yes it is, but I'd have to agree. So again, two people have come forward, and one person said about this about homework, and the other person agreed, yada yada yada. And then what else had happened was Farrah was all like, "How dare you criticize this? How dare you criticize that? Will we do good in our test scores?" Listen, I understand, but that's not the way to handle things. You want to handle things right, you need to make sure you do things the right way. Alright, when we come back, what is hazing? We'll tell you about that after this. Hazing, it's initiation, bastardization, ragging, or suspicion refers to any activity expected of someone enjoying participating in a group that humiliates, degrades, abuse, or endangers regardless of a person's willingness to participate. That is a form of bullying. This happened last week from Orange Grove as a number of students were involved in hazing by a small number of students, and there was an investigation by the school. And because of this, the superintendent said it was unacceptable. They don't tolerate bullying or hazing. I mean, hazing and bullying is the same thing. The difference is like, it's bad. Now after that, we learned 5 students from that same school were arrested for the same thing, for hazing. So, before we go, I want to give you some tips on how to avoid hazing. If you want to stop hazing, here's the way to stop hazing. Reduce the power of detriment between members and initiates. Give members time to reflect on their actions. Encourage members to voice their concerns with new member education program. Be willing to amend traditions. Develop a chapter anti-hazing policy. Share some ideas with other organizations. And then take advantage of campus resources. We have to stop hazing. It's bad. I've talked about bullying a lot in these years. And believe me, this is worse. If I had to have Eric come on the show to explain his views about hazing, I may have to well do so. It's unacceptable, and it will not be tolerated in schools, nor on my show. Which brings me to the next point. School pranks. Senior pranks. It's been a tradition for years, but last year, since COVID, there hasn't been any senior pranks. Were there any in the news? Coming up on Saturday, we are going to give you some of the latest pranks ever since COVID. I don't think there's any, but we'll find some. That's Give Me a Break Saturday night. And that's all this is. Give Me a Break Friday going to Saturday. We'll see you again for Give Me a Break Saturday night. Bob is here on YouTube. You take care of yourself and each other. Good night.